For 11 years, I cooked every family gathering for 25 people. Never got a thank you. Thanksgiving morning, I packed my knives and vanished. 30 hungry relatives arrived to find an empty kitchen. It started when I was 22, fresh out of culinary school, with dreams of opening my own restaurant. Mom called me crying about hosting Thanksgiving dinner for the extended family after Grandma passed away. "I don't know how to cook for so many people," she sobbed. "You're the only one with professional training. Please, just this once, just this once." Those 3 words haunted me for the next 11 years. That first Thanksgiving, I cooked for 18 relatives. Turkey stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce rolls, 3 different pies. I spent 3 days prepping, shopping with my own money, and cooking in Mom's cramped kitchen. When dinner was served, everyone raved about the food. "This is restaurant quality. Best Thanksgiving we've ever had. You're so talented." But when it came time to clean up, suddenly everyone had somewhere else to be. I spent 4 hours alone washing dishes, storing leftovers, and scrubbing pots while the family watched football in the living room. "Thank you, honey," Mom said as I finally finished. "You're such a lifesaver." Christmas rolled around and the phone rang again. "The family loved your cooking so much at Thanksgiving. Would you mind making Christmas dinner too?" Just family again. Nothing fancy, nothing fancy. For 22 people this time, since word had spread about my cooking, I made a prime rib roast, honey. Glazed ham, roasted vegetables, potatoes au gratin, Yorkshire pudding, and a selection of desserts. Again, I paid for groceries. Again, I cooked alone. Again, I cleaned up alone. "You're amazing," my aunt said, taking a selfie with my perfectly plated dessert table. "I could never do this." She posted the photo on Facebook with the caption, "Family dinner was incredible tonight. So blessed to have such talented relatives." No mention of who actually did the work. My professional training had become the family's personal convenience. What I had learned in culinary school to advance my career was now expected to be freely available to anyone. With shared DNA, the techniques I practiced for hours, the knife skills I'd perfected, palate I developed. All of it was suddenly family property. By year 2, it had become expected. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering automatically fell to me. Easter dinner for 20, 4th of July barbecue for 30, my cousin's graduation party for 40. Each event grew larger as extended relatives brought friends, and plus ones were so lucky to have a professional chef in the family. They'd say, as if I had been put on earth solely to serve them. The financial burden escalated quickly. While my classmates from culinary school were building their careers in saving money, I was spending thousands on ingredients for family events. My entry-level restaurant salary barely covered my own expenses, but somehow, I'd become responsible for funding elaborate meals multiple times per year. I tried setting boundaries. "I'd love to contribute a dish, but I can't handle the entire meal anymore. But you're so good at it. We don't know how to cook like you do. Maybe we could all bring something. It won't be the same. Your food is what makes these gatherings special." Guilt trips were relentless. When I suggested potluck-style meals, I was told I was being selfish. When I asked for help with costs, I was reminded that family helps family. When I requested assistance with prep work, everyone suddenly had conflicts. "I'd help, but I'm not good in the kitchen. I don't want to get in your way. You're the expert." I just mess things up. These weren't genuine offers to learn or assist. They were excuses wrapped in false humility. The same relatives who claimed to be helpless in the kitchen managed to feed themselves, and their own families perfectly fine every other day of the year. But when it came to family gatherings, suddenly everyone developed amnesia about basic cooking skills. By year 3, I was spending $2,000 of my own money per holiday on groceries. My salary from the restaurant where I worked barely covered my rent and student loans. Somehow, I was expected to fund elaborate meals for dozens of people multiple times per year. I started putting groceries on credit cards, telling myself it was temporary, that eventually someone would offer to help with costs. No one ever did. The requests escalated beyond holidays. Mom's book club needed catering. Dad's poker night required just some snacks. My sister's baby shower needed a full spread. Time I was told to handle everything. "You don't mind, do you? You're so good at this stuff." Mind, I was exhausted, working full-time at a restaurant, then coming home to prep for family events. My own social life disappeared. Dating became impossible when every weekend was consumed by family obligations. Career advancement stalled because I couldn't work overtime or attend industry events. While my colleagues networked at culinary conferences, I was home prepping vegetables for my cousin's birthday party. "Why don't you date?" relatives would ask during the parties I'd spent days preparing. "She's too busy taking care of all of us." Mom would laugh as if my isolation was charming rather than tragic. The irony was suffocating. I'd become the family expert on food and hospitality, yet I was the loveliest person at every gathering. I knew exactly how everyone liked their steaks cooked, remembered every food allergy, accommodated every dietary preference. But no one seemed to remember that I was a person with my own needs and dreams beyond their dinner plans. Year 4 brought the wedding season. 3 cousins got engaged, and suddenly I was expected to cater 3 separate wedding receptions. Not asked, expected. "We can't afford a real caterer." "My cousin," Sarah explained. "But you're practically professional. It would mean so much to the family." Sarah's wedding reception was for 150 people. I spent $8,000 of my own money on ingredients and borrowed commercial equipment from my restaurant job. I worked for 6 straight days, sleeping 3 hours per night, prepare food for her budget wedding. The preparation consumed my vacation time, my savings, and my sanity. The bride's family budget conveniently excluded the cost of my labor and groceries. They'd calculated flowers, venue, music, photography. Somehow, my contribution was considered free. $8,000 in a week of my life were valued at exactly $0 in their wedding budget. The wedding photos showed a beautiful reception with elegant food displays. Sarah posted hundreds of photos on social media talking about her perfect day and amazing food. Not one photo included me, not one caption mentioned my work. When people asked who catered the event, she said family helped out. The thank you card I received said, "Thanks for helping with the food, sir, and Mike helping with the food." I'd catered an entire wedding reception and she called it helping with the food. 6 months later, I watched Sarah post vacation photos from her honeymoon. In Italy, a trip cost more than I'd spent catering her wedding. While she sipped wine in Tuscany, I was still paying off the credit card debt from her reception. By year 5, I was burning out, working 60-hour weeks at the restaurant, then spending my days off cooking for family events. My chef colleagues were advancing their careers while I remained stuck in entry-level positions because I couldn't commit to the demanding schedule required for promotion. "You seem tired lately." Boss observed everything. "Okay?" How could I explain that I was basically running a second catering business for free, that my family treated my professional skills as their personal convenience, that I hadn't had a real weekend off in years, that I was missing networking events, advanced training opportunities, and career development? Because I was trapped in a cycle of unpaid family labor. My contemporaries from culinary school were becoming sous chefs, opening their own restaurants, winning culinary competitions. I was stuck making the same entry-level wages while my weekends disappeared into family obligations. The gap between my potential and my reality widened with every family gathering. Year 6 brought a new low: my grandmother's 80th birthday party. Mom volunteered me to cater a surprise party for 60 people without asking first. "I already told everyone you'd handle the food," she said when she finally informed me 3 days before the event. "Grandma specifically requested your lasagna." I'd never made lasagna for Grandma. She'd never requested anything from me, but somehow her birthday party became my responsibility. 3 days, notice, and an expectation to feed 60 people. The manipulation was so blatant. It was almost impressive. Create a fictional request from the guest of honor, then use it to guilt me into compliance. I maxed out my credit card, buying ingredients. I called in sick to work, losing a day's wages. I spent 72 hours straight cooking, layering. Dozens of lasagna is preparing salads, baking bread, making desserts. My back ached from standing. My hands were raw from washing dishes. Eyes burned from exhaustion. The party was a huge success. Everyone praised the food, took photos, made jokes about opening a restaurant. But when it came time to clean up, I found myself alone in the kitchen again, while 60 relatives socialized in the backyard. My grandmother, the guest of honor, never personally thanked me. She spent the evening receiving praise for the wonderful party she'd hosted. She'd hosted a party I paid for, cooked for, and cleaned up after pattern was becoming clearer. I was visible only when food needed to be prepared or problems needed solving. During the actual celebrations, I became invisible. While relatives bonded and created memories, I was in the kitchen isolated from the family connection. These gatherings were supposedly about. Year 7 and 8 intensified the cycle: more weddings, more graduation, more milestone birthdays, each event larger and more elaborate than the last. The family had developed expensive tastes, requesting more sophisticated menus as my skills improved. They wanted restaurant-quality presentation, complex flavor profiles, and Instagram-worthy plating. "Can you make that dish you saw on the cooking show? The neighbors are coming, so make it extra special. We want something impressive this time, impressive restaurant quality," all code words for more work, more money, more time. They wanted fine dining experiences at family gathering prices, which was to say free. My credit card debt reached $25,000. I was making minimum payments while accumulating more debt with every family event. The interest charges alone consumed a significant portion of my paycheck. I had created a financial prison for myself, one turkey dinner at a time. The mental toll was equally devastating. I developed anxiety about answering my phone because it usually meant another catering request. I stopped making plans because family events always took precedence. I gained weight from stress eating and lost friends who got tired of my constant cancellations. You need to prioritize your own life. My therapist said during one of our sessions, "They're my family." I replied, "How can I say no? How can they keep saying to exploiting you?" Saying no felt impossible. The guilt trips had been so effective for so long that I'd internalize the belief that my worth to the family was entirely based on my cooking. If I stopped cooking they still want me around. Family gatherings seemed to revolve around my food. Without that contribution, what role would I have? The answer I was beginning to suspect was no role at all. Year 9 brought a revelation that shattered my remaining illusions. I overheard a conversation between my sister and aunt at Easter dinner. A dinner I'd spent $1,500 in 3 days preparing. The food is incredible, as always. My aunt said, "I know, we're so lucky. Freak, gourmet catering whenever we want it." Does she ever ask for money? Sometimes, but we just remind her that family helps family. She always caves. They actually laughed about manipulating me into free labor. They were aware of what they were doing, the helplessness, the gratitude, the family obligation, guilt trips. It was all calculated exploitation, disguised as love. I stood in the kitchen, holding a platter of desserts. I'd spent hours perfecting listening to my own family, discuss their strategy for taking advantage of my generosity. The conversations at these gatherings weren't about catching up or bonding. They were about the quality of the free food and how to ensure it continued. Year 10 brought a breaking point. My sister announced her engagement and immediately informed me that I'd be catering her wedding reception for 200 people. "We've already booked the venue." She said the only cost is food since you'll handle that part, not asked formed. As if my labor and money were automatically included in her wedding budget. As if I were a vendor she'd already contracted rather than a sister whose consent mattered. "Sarah, this is a huge undertaking. Catering for 200 people requires. It's my wedding day, you wouldn't want to ruin it, would you?" The manipulation was so blatant, it took my breath away. Refused to provide free catering for 200 people. I'd be the villain who ruined her special day, accept the burden, and I'd spend months of my life and thousands of my dollars making her dreams come true while she took all the credit. I spent $15,000 on her wedding reception. Money I didn't have, money I borrowed against my retirement fund, money that was supposed to go toward finally opening my own restaurant. I worked for 2 weeks straight, preparing food for her perfect reception. I hired additional help with my own money because the volume was beyond what one person could handle. The stress was overwhelming. I lost PS12 in 2 weeks from not eating while constantly cooking. I developed a tremor in my hands from exhaustion and caffeine overconsumption. I cried myself to sleep every night, wondering how I gotten so trapped in this cycle of exploitation. The wedding was featured in a local magazine as an example of elegant celebrations on a budget. The article praised the gourmet cuisine and professional presentation without mentioning who provided it. My sister was quoted saying, "We saved money by keeping everything in the family. Keeping everything in the family. My financial sacrifice, my professional skills, my unpaid labor, all dismissed as keeping it in the family." The magazine readers probably assumed they'd hired an expensive caterer. The reality was that I bankrupted myself to fund my sister's perfect day. That night, exhausted and broke, I realized I'd wasted 11 years of my life being the family's unpaid caterer. I'd missed career opportunities, relationships, travel, and personal growth because I'd been trapped in a cycle of exploitation disguised as family obligation. My life had become unrecognizable. At 33, I was living in a studio apartment because larger spaces were unaffordable after years of funding family events. I was single because dating was impossible with my schedule. I was stuck in the same job I had held for years because advancement required availability I couldn't provide. I was financially ruined, emotionally exhausted, and completely invisible except when someone needed food prepared. Year 11 started the same way. Easter dinner, mom's birthday, dad's retirement party, Memorial Day barbecue. Each event more elaborate than the last guest list, longer, each expectation higher. I was no longer a family member. I was the hired help who worked for free. The requests had become demands. The suggestions had become commands. Gratitude had evaporated, entirely replaced by entitlement and criticism when things weren't perfect. Turkey was a little dry last time. Can you make more dessert options? We need vegetarian dishes too. Now, presentation wasn't as nice as Sarah's wedding. Never. Thank you. Never. How can we help? Never. What would you like to contribute? Just endless critiques and escalating demands from people who contributed nothing but their appetites. The final straw came with Thanksgiving 2024. The family had grown to include spouses, children, friends of friends, and random plus ones. The guest list hit 30 people. Mom called in October with the usual expectation. Same time, as always, I'll make sure we have extra folding chairs. Same time, as always, as if I'd never had a choice in the matter. As if my participation was guaranteed, regardless of my feelings, finances, or personal circumstances. This year felt different. I was 33 years old, still living in a studio apartment because I couldn't afford anything bigger after years of funding family events. Still single because dating was impossible with my schedule. Still stuck in the same job because I couldn't advance while maintaining my role as family caterer. Still drowning in debt from other people's celebrations. I started planning Thanksgiving dinner like I had for the past 11 years, made lists, calculated portions, planned the timeline. Something was shifting in my mind. A quiet rebellion was building with every item I added to the shopping list. Turkey $80, ham $60, prime rib for the relatives who don't like turkey, $150 organic vegetables because my aunt was on a health kick, $200 specialty items for various dietary restrictions and preferences, $300. Wine pairing is because Dad's new girlfriend was sophisticated, $250. Dessert ingredients for 5 different options, $180. The total came to $1,220, plus my time, which at restaurant industry rates would be worth approximately $2,000 for the prep and service hours required. $3,220 total value that I was expected to provide for free, while the beneficiaries contributed absolutely nothing except their presence and criticism. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I had a moment of clarity while shopping for turkey. I was in the grocery store, calculator in hand, adding up costs that would, once again, max out my credit card. Around me, other shoppers were buying single turkeys for their own families. Normal people preparing normal holiday meals for normal-sized groups, using their own money for their own relatives. I stood in that grocery store aisle and realized I'd always had a choice. The family's helplessness was learned helplessness. Their dependency on me was enabling, not love. Their expectation of my service was entitlement, not gratitude. Turkey back, and walked out of the store. That night, I made a plan, not for Thanksgiving dinner, but for my liberation. I researched the cost of professional catering for 30 people. The quotes ranged from $2,500 to $4,000, not including service charges and gratuities. I'd been providing that level of service for free for 11 years. Total value of my unpaid labor was staggering easily over $100,000 when calculated conservatively. I thought about my culinary school classmates, many of whom now own successful restaurants or worked as executive chefs. While they built careers and accumulated wealth, I'd subsidized my family's entertainment. While they gained recognition for their talents, I'd remained invisible while they'd invested in their futures. I had bankrupted myself for other people's celebrations. The resentment I'd suppressed for years finally surfaced. Not anger exactly, but a cold clarity about the true nature of these relationships. I wasn't family to them. I was a resource to be exploited. My skills weren't appreciated, they were expected. My sacrifices weren't valued, they were demanded. Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, I cooked myself a simple pasta dinner and went to bed early, no frantic prep work, no late-night cooking sessions, no stress-induced insomnia about timing and logistics. For the first time in 11 years, the night before Thanksgiving was peaceful. Thursday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. as usual. The family expected me at Mom's house by 8 a.m. to start the Thanksgiving marathon. Instead, I packed my knife roll, loaded my car with my personal cooking equipment that had lived at Mom's house for years and drove to a different destination entirely. I checked into a hotel by the lake, 2 hours away from the family gathering. I turned off my phone and ordered room service. Someone else cooking for me for once. At Mom's house, 30 relatives arrived expecting their annual feast. Instead, they found an empty kitchen and a confused hostess who had no idea how to cook for a crowd. "Where's the turkey?" someone asked. "Where's Jenny?" someone else wondered. Mom tried calling me, but my phone was off. She tried reasoning with the gathering, suggesting everyone pitching to cook something, but nobody knew how to prepare a turkey. Nobody had brought side dishes because that was always my responsibility. Nobody had planned anything because I had handled everything for over a decade. The learned helplessness was complete. 30 adults, most of whom managed their own households perfectly well, were completely baffled by the prospect of preparing a holiday meal without me. My phone, when I finally turned it back on that evening, had 47 missed calls and 23 text messages. "Where are you? People are asking about dinner? This is embarrassing. You're ruining Thanksgiving. How could you do this to the family? Everyone's hungry and confused. Mom is crying. You're being incredibly selfish." The messages escalated from confusion to anger to desperation. Apparently, they tried to order takeout, but every restaurant was closed for the holiday. They'd attempted to cook, but nobody knew how to prepare a turkey or coordinate multiple dishes for a large group. Several relatives left early, disappointed and hungry. Others stayed and ate sandwiches while complaining about the worst Thanksgiving ever. Mom spent the day apologizing for the lack of food, finally understanding what it felt like to host without adequate preparation or skills. Dad tried to barbecue a frozen turkey and nearly burned down the deck. My sister attempted to make mashed potatoes but somehow made them lumpy and cold. My aunt tried to help but kept asking questions. Nobody could answer. How long does stuffing take? What temperature for the rolls? When do we start the gravy? Questions I'd been answering for 11 years while they socialized and took credit for the meals. The family gathering that had relied on my skills for 11 years collapsed completely without me. The house full of relatives who had praised my cooking suddenly realized they had no idea how any of it worked. The seamless holiday experience they'd taken for granted revealed itself to be entirely dependent on my unpaid labor. This is the worst Thanksgiving ever. My sister texted, "I hope you're happy." For the first time in 11 years, I'd had a peaceful Thanksgiving. I'd eaten what I wanted when I wanted. I'd watched movies in my hotel room without worrying about timing or cleanup. I'd taken a nap without anyone demanding my attention. I'd had a conversation with the hotel restaurant manager about industry trends instead of washing dishes while my family watched football. As I was happy, Friday morning brought a different tone in the messages. Anger had shifted to bargaining here. "We get it. You needed a break. Can you come back for Christmas? Maybe we can help more next time. We didn't realize how much work you were doing." They didn't realize after 11 years of watching me work alone while they socialized. After years of me explicitly asking for help and being dismissed. After seeing my exhaustion, my financial strain, my isolation, they didn't realize gaslighting was almost impressive in its audacity. They realized they just chosen to ignore it because acknowledging my sacrifice would have required reciprocal effort or gratitude they weren't willing to provide. I drove home Sunday evening and found my parents waiting in my apartment parking lot. "We need to talk," Mom said, looking haggard. What about Thanksgiving? About your disappearing act?" "I didn't disappear. Took a holiday. You abandoned the family. I withdrew my unpaid labor. There's a difference." We stood in that parking lot for an hour while they tried every manipulation tactic they perfected over the years. Guilt about disappointing relatives, shame about embarrassing the family, accusations of selfishness and ingratitude, threats about family consequences and damaged relationships. Something had changed in me during those 3 days away. I'd remembered what it felt like to have my own life. I had experienced the peace of not being responsible for everyone else's happiness. I tasted freedom from the expectation that my professional skills were family property. "Christmas is in 4 weeks. Dad said, surely you'll cook for Christmas." "No." "Do you mean I know? I won't be cooking Christmas dinner. Any other family dinner? I'm done being the unpaid caterer." "But what will we do?" "The same thing every other family does. Cook your own food or order takeout or potluck or hire actual caterers. You'll figure it out. We don't know how you learn or you'll go hungry. Either way, it's not my problem anymore." The conversation continued for another hour. The outcome was inevitable. They wanted the service without paying for it. I wanted recognition and reciprocity that they'd never provide. We were at an impasse that 11 years of pattern establishment had made irreversible. They left angry, threatening to invite me from Christmas. If I wouldn't cook, I told them that was their choice. My cooking days for family events were over permanently. Christmas came and went without me. I spent it with friends who appreciated my cooking when I chose to share it, not when I was obligated to provide it. The family Christmas was apparently a disaster of undercooked ham and burned vegetables. Maybe hunger would teach them what my words had failed to communicate. New Year's brought a different approach. Instead of demands, they tried negotiation. What if we paid you? What if people brought side dishes? What if we helped with cleanup? All reasonable solutions that should have been offered years ago. But I was done. 11 years of exploitation couldn't be undone with last minute. Concessions offered only after the free labor disappeared. "I'm not the family caterer anymore," I told them. "Find other arrangements." The offers escalated. They promised to cover grocery costs. They offered to pay me minimum wage. They suggested splitting the cooking duties. Each proposal revealed how little they understood the true scope of what I'd been providing and how late their recognition had come. Over the following months, something interesting happened. Without me to rely on, the family actually learned to manage their own events. Mom took cooking classes and discovered she enjoyed it. Dad learned to grill properly and took pride in his new skills. My sister discovered she had a talent for baking and started contributing desserts to gatherings. Relatives began bringing actual dishes instead of showing up empty-handed. The potluck model they'd rejected for years suddenly became acceptable when the alternative was no food at all. Everyone learned to coordinate menus, share recipes, and contribute meaningfully to family gatherings. The family gatherings got smaller but more authentic. People came because they wanted to spend time together, not because they were guaranteed a free gourmet meal. Focus shifted from food to actual relationships. Conversations became more meaningful when they weren't centered around praising my cooking. Some relatives stopped attending when the food quality dropped. Good riddance. They were only there for my cooking. They weren't really family anyway. People who remained were the ones who valued relationships over free meals. 6 months later, I finally had the savings and energy to pursue my real dream. I opened a small catering business, charging actual money for my professional skills. Irony wasn't lost on me. I was finally being paid for cooking after years of doing it for free. My first client was a complete stranger who found me through social media. She paid my full rate without negotiation and thanked me profusely for the beautiful food. It was the first time in years someone had properly valued my work. Contrast was stark. Strangers who appreciated and paid for my skills versus family who had exploited them for free. The business grew quickly. Word spread about the quality of my food and service. Corporate clients hired me for events. Couples booked me for intimate dinner parties. Wealthy families retained me for holiday catering and paid premium rates for the same level of service. I provided my own family for nothing. Within a year, I was earning more for my catering business than I'd ever made at the restaurant. I was finally being compensated fairly for my professional skills. I was building a client base that valued my work. I was creating the career I'd always dreamed of, funded by people who understood the worth of professional culinary services. The family occasionally asks, if I miss cooking for them, they frame it as nostalgia, as if those were happy memories we all cherish together. They seem genuinely confused by my refusal to return to the old arrangement, even with their offers of minimal compensation. I don't miss the financial strain that kept me trapped in poverty while funding their celebrations. I don't miss the physical exhaustion from working double shifts. My restaurant job plus unpaid family catering. I don't miss the emotional manipulation disguised as family love. I don't miss being taken for granted or having my skills treated as family obligation rather than professional talent. What I miss is the family. I thought I had one that valued me as a person, not just as a service provider. What I found instead was a group of people who confused love with exploitation and gratitude with entitlement. They loved what I could do for them, not who I was as an individual. Sometimes people ask how I could abandon my family over something as simple as cooking. They don't understand that it was never about the cooking. It was about respect, appreciation, and basic human decency. It was about being valued for more than my utility. It was about reciprocal relationships instead of one-sided exploitation. For 11 years, I gave my family my time, money, skills, and emotional energy, took it all, and demanded more. They treated my generosity as their right and my boundaries as my selfishness. They confused my love for them with their entitlement to my labor. Walking away from that wasn't abandoning my family. It was choosing to value myself the way they never did. It was refusing to participate in relationships built on exploitation rather than mutual respect. These days when I cook, it's because I want to. When I share my food, it's because I choose to. When people thank me, it's because they mean it, and they understand the value of what I've provided. When clients pay me, they do so willingly and fairly, recognizing that professional skills deserve professional compensation. When Thanksgiving comes around each year, I make myself a simple meal and remember the year I finally said no. The year I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop letting people take advantage of your love. The empty kitchen. They found that Thanksgiving morning wasn't a punishment. It was a mirror reflecting 11 years of taking without giving, expecting without appreciating, and demanding without deserving. It was the natural consequence of treating a family member like unpaid staff for over a decade. They got exactly what they paid for, nothing. And finally, I got what I deserved. A life where my skills were valued, my time was respected, and my choices mattered. The turkey that wasn't there taught them more about gratitude than 11 years of perfect meals ever had.